Brad.
I'm Scott.
This is Curiosity.
We're on with Deanna Zhang. We're really excited to have you on the show, Deanna.
Boom.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited too.
I was giving Deanna sort of the breakdown of like how this works, and I felt like I was sort of like explaining it to myself for the first time. It was like, it is the sort of the unprocess, but like we're just gonna have a conversation, and this is a show that explores the role of curiosity in people's kind of everyday lives.
I love it. I love the topic.
Yeah, we're big fans of the word
Yeah.
Just gonna pretty much everything. Unthink, unformat, unprocess, undivide. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
That's the first knuckle touch ever on a show.
It's good to know that there's like appropriate distance to make that happen.
Yeah, we are appropriately distanced. All is well.
Well, let's jump into it. Deanna, you're meeting Brad for the first time today, which always makes an episode exciting because there's a lot to kind of dive into and learn. We've known each other for a couple of years now, and just thrilled to have you on the show. Just appreciate you taking some of the time.
Of course.
One of the things that we like to explore a little bit is just tell us a little bit about kind of what it is that you're working on today, passion projects or otherwise, sort of, and then we'll like to understand a bit more of how you got there and why you're working on the things that you're working on.
And maybe even more fundamental to that, like why do you get out of bed every day?
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Cutting to the core. We're going to break apart your soul on this show.
That's actually the format.
Yeah. No. So this is actually a topic very relevant to what I'm doing right now because I recently quit my job. And so I've been waking up every morning with the intent to learn something that day. And the idea was to just press reset because there are so many things around climate tech, around energy technology, that I know I don't understand enough about, and that I know I have millions of questions around, but that I don't have the time, or I didn't have the time to research. And so that was part of the reason why I decided to make the move, is just to have the time and ability and the freedom to be able to wake up every day and decide like, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm just going to go down this rabbit hole, and there's nothing preventing me from, exploring it as much as I need to explore it. So, just these last few days, I've been making a list of 100 questions around the topic of climate tech that I don't know the answers to, and trying to go through that list. Writing down those questions itself is an exercise because oftentimes if I have a question, all of a sudden I'm going down the road of trying to Google to see if it's a good question. And then once you're doing that, you're finding answers. And once you're doing that, you're like, wait, I just answered that question. I need a new question now to fulfill my list. How
many questions do you have so far?
I have 25 so far.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But it's divided into 4 sections. So I have the first section complete. I've got the next 3 to do. It's going a lot slower than I had intended for that reason, but it's fun.
Yeah. Do you have a goal of like how many questions you want to get to, or is it just like
100?
Oh, wow.
For this first post. Yeah. And then
that's beautiful.
So I guess I'm documenting all of this on a blog. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
What is the blog?
It's called eTech Monkey.
There we go. Go check out eTech Monkey.
Is it live? Monkey. Is it up and running?
It is up and running.
Okay.
I would say that what's on there right now is basically my bio and a bunch of my past stuff. Like,
cool.
This will be my first kind of like 2022 huge post. And it's a long one, but it's one that has already helped me clarify a lot of things and has helped me learn a lot of things around energy tech and industrial climate tech. So it's been really cool just to be kind of free agent, if you will.
Wow. So have you always worked in the climate tech space? Is this a new passion?
I have been in around energy tech for the last 3.5 years.
Cool.
So climate tech, I say, is itself a little bit of a new concept.
Yeah.
Because it only really emerged in 2018, 2019. Um, but there are parts of energy tech that overlap with climate tech that I've only really gotten into recently. So this whole idea of industrial decarbonization around cement or iron and steel
Mm.
and getting into like the dirty details of that, I really haven't had to do that. I really didn't have to do that at TPH so much. Also, ag, the process of
Yeah.
producing fertilizer
Totally.
and
Ag makes up for quite a bit of emissions.
yeah,
I
I think
learned recently.
it's like 20%,
Yeah,
I
it's
think.
big part of the pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Construction's another one I didn't know was
Yep.
so high up there.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Yep. Concrete is huge.
Concrete specifically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yep.
So were you doing energy tech before your last company?
TPH has been my only company. So I joined TPH right out of school.
Cool.
But I was a generalist in energy up until 2017. And that's when I really started to get into the energy tech world. And that was really focused more around digital oil field and new oil field technology. So that naturally expanded into industrial technology, which has naturally expanded into kind of energy transition types of technology and energy tech.
Sweet.
Can you share a little bit of kind of what the sort of a day in the life, sort of before and after kind of this big pivot? Because that's a big decision to kind of leave a big investment bank and kind of move on and kind of embark out on your own adventure. What are the aspects of kind of your day to day that you are discovering and that whether good or bad as a part of that transition?
Yeah. I mean, I miss a little bit of the email traffic, I guess. I mean, there's pros and cons to all of that.
Did you say you
obviously.
miss email?
Well, it's just like
Wow,
feeling
that's
like
amazing.
feeling like you're in the middle of something, right?
Yeah.
Like at TPH, there's just so many, like you would get alerts from all the different things you're subscribed to. You would also just get emails from people just updating listservs on what's happened in their sector, like forwarding press releases. And then you obviously get emails from your actual contacts, like asking for meetings or, talking about this or that, sending over things.
Kind of constant signals about where you're supposed to be and what you should be thinking about and working on.
So I felt like my time at TPH was like, I would say 50% of it was just managing emails.
Sure.
Okay, so for all those out there who are really inundated and exhausted by email, there can be beauty in email. You just open my eyes to something that I've never known. I have often said email is the antithesis of humanity. And so the fact that you saw something beautiful in email, I love. I'm a pretty optimistic human, and that's not one I've been very optimistic about. So I just needed to pause on that for a moment because that struck me to the core. I was like,
change Brad's mind.
Positive email opinions? What? That's beautiful. Love that. Please continue.
Good in short bursts, right? Because if you go without it for too long, you kind of end up like feeling isolated.
Yeah.
But then when you're in it, you're like, wait, this is way too much.
Did you feel that way? And did you ever feel like positive about it in the moment, or like now after the fact, you're like, oh, actually email's like kind of a beautiful thing and has some value?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I was definitely not as appreciative of all the traffic while I was there. But, some people had already hinted to me like, hey, like you're going to go out and do this. Like, just make sure you keep talking to people, because you're going to feel really lonely. And so I had kind of an inkling that this whole thing would occur. So I've been trying to just make a conscious effort to just keep talking to people every day. I've got a pretty good network now that it doesn't take a lot of effort to schedule like a couple meetings a day. But at the same time, like you just can't forget about it, because otherwise you look back and you're like, what did I do for the last week? Like, am I up to date now? Do I know what's going on in the world?
So should we put Deanna's email in the show notes and generate a few more emails?
Email traffic too. I also like that term. Man, my mind is blown over email.
You're gonna have to completely rethink your paradigm.
I think so, because I mean,
what
like,
email means
on
in
the
your
flip
life.
side of that, I think we need to completely reimagine the design and interface of email, because I think it's miserable and it's a infinite list of chaos. But also there's some beauty in it. Okay, let's take that as
Represents some
inspiration
connectivity.
and still make it way prettier and way less a annoying list of inundated content at the
Yeah.
same time. So
Yeah.
both. So speaking of curiosity, I'm curious. The process, like one day you're existing in the world of email traffic and meetings and the day-to-days of your life that you've known since you graduated university, and now you're no longer in that environment. You can't evolve into something else. Like, can we like maybe break down a little bit, like what were those like moments in that decision of going from I'm going to leave what I'm doing and go do something completely different, leave what's familiar to go into the unfamiliar?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was born out of frustration most of all.
Hmm.
Not frustration necessarily with TPH or anything. It was frustration with myself in the fact that I was getting so behind on all of the readings I meant to do. Like people were saying like, "Oh, you should read this book or that book." And like, "Have you seen XYZ?" It's like I don't have time to like go through and listen to all of these podcasts, go through all of these articles and read all of these books while also doing this job at the same time. And I know I need to do it because otherwise I'm just going to fall further and further behind in sort of like my knowledge base. There was that, and then there was sort of like frustration with myself for also being a little bit inefficient around all this, because I was doing a lot of matchmaking for a lot of different people, but I just felt like there's something there's like a better way to do all of this, and so that's kind of like my secondary goal in quitting the job, is actually just to go out and try building something from scratch.
So taking a lot of that scar tissue and applying it in a new way.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Were
That's
there
a
like
very
certain-
elegant way to put it. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a lot of scar tissue, so
Yeah.
that's scar tissue speaking. So like those moments, like what were some of the thinking that you had? I think the audience would be super interested in this, especially as we're going through the Great Resignation in real time. Like there's a lot of people out there who are still on the fence. Like, and not that I'm advocating everyone should leave the work they do. If you love what you do, like keep rocking. But I just feel like we exist in a society today where we all have the opportunity to like align our practice and our passion. I'm a huge proponent of people discovering their life's work rather than just a job or a career.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for you, like, I don't know, were there like certain like specific moments in time, like you're at a cafe sipping a cup of coffee and like some inspiration came, like were there like certain things or environments or places and times, or was it just like a combination of moments over time?
Well, I think I've had the benefit of just being exposed to a lot of people who've taken a career risk, like working around startups and working around the energy tech universe. You come across a lot of people that have put, way more than I've put on the line by quitting my job, because, I mean, I don't have dependents. I don't have a family to think about. Like I obviously have my parents and I have a partner, but I don't have kids that depend on me. I don't have a mortgage. Like there are a lot of things that made it kind of easier for me to make a decision around it. But just having just being around those sorts of people and seeing them kind of pursue their passions and chase their dreams, I think just has a really big effect on you. You're like, what am I doing? Like if I'm frustrated, I should go out and do something about that, right? I should go out and take a risk. And so yeah, to your point, I think influence of people is an influence of like who you're surrounded with and what you're surrounded with is like is has a huge impact on that thought process. I don't think there was any one particular moment. I think it was just, I saw that there were a lot of problems with what I personally was doing, like how I wanted to help, like I wanted to help 100 companies, but could only help like 4 at a time. It was just kind of that frustration, and then also just like the not knowing part of it. Like very much, was being asked a lot of questions I didn't know. And I could maybe like put together a decently educated answer on, but that I would love to have spent more time actually thinking about and researching and pursuing. So, it just sort of was a buildup, actually, probably over the last year or so.
Yeah.
It took me maybe 2 months to actually from okay, maybe I should be taking a break and trying to build something outside of TPH to, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And
Oh.
and then that was last summer. So really it was 6 months from then where I had time to kind of prepare for
Yeah.
for actually doing it.
So the other aspect that I think people often wonder, at least I hear about and I think about too, is like financially, like how you do that. It's easy to be like, yeah, just quit your job and go do something else. But like sometimes it's not that easy. I mean, for you, like, were you like strategic about, I'm going to build up, a fund and like put some money aside, or like, how did that work? Or was it more just like, I'm just going to go for it and like see what happens?
I mean, the nice thing about being an investment banker is that you do build up a nice cushion.
Yeah.
Uh,
So first step, build up a nice cushion.
Build up
Like
a nice
truly,
cushion.
yeah.
Like you have enough
Pay off your
savings.
debt. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's true.
Have enough savings where, you're not going to be thinking about, at least like obviously be money conscious, but you're not going to be like worried over money
Yeah.
for a set period of time. For me, I think that's going to be 2 years. So
Cool.
I've kind of given myself that timeline.
That's awesome.
And in that way, because I think there's a lot of pressure after you quit to like figure out, okay, will I have a revenue stream? Will I need to just bring in something so that I'm not like cash flow negative?
Yeah.
And I think that pressure can sometimes be a distraction, because then
Yeah.
you start taking on things that may not be aligned with what your original goals are.
Oh,
like
yeah.
consulting projects that, are, you'll be spending like half your time on things that you actually don't want to learn, or you don't actually want to spend your time on. So I think there's just risk of getting distracted when you're thinking about money. And so I have just the great fortune of not being in that position, at least for now,
Yeah.
because of the investment banking job.
Yeah. It's a really important point. We've been talking about this a lot with our team, and I'm a big proponent of just well-being, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, intellectual, all the well-beings. And I think truly like debt tends to be one of the strongest correlations to like timidity and people's unwillingness to make bold moves, fundamentally because they just aren't able to. And so I think sometimes to get to the point where you are is, I mean, it's like little things like pay off your debt, live below your means, build up a healthy nest egg, do and build an investment portfolio, like make sure those aspects exist and are a part of your day-to-day lifestyle. And then I truly believe you have so much more freedom you have the financial freedom to really live the life that you want to live and build the life that you love.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for living, like you said, below your means and frugally, and being able to just have the consciousness to like know that you're working towards freedom later on in life. And yeah, I wouldn't say that like I've been eating ramen noodles every day, but I've been definitely conscious of that, and conscious of the fact that like my goal in life was never to live a flashy lifestyle or anything like that. It was to really find what I wanted to do, and find what I love to do, and be able to do that as much as I can, and potentially make a living out of it. So
yeah, like discover your humanity and become fully alive in your own humanity. That's like the real fulfillment. I think a lot of the things that we chase in life, extrinsic aspects especially, they're never really fulfilling. We've talked about that in the past, how like so often in life, moments happen and like, there's cool accolades or promotions or raises, but like, does that ever really satisfy anyone? I mean, it doesn't satisfy me. What satisfies me is like being alive in my own humanity, like having like family and friends and loved ones around, and like, you know, traveling the world with my wife, and like having experiences. Like those are the things that feel really fulfilling. I just wonder if like we're it's all these orthodoxies, these things we believe to be true but aren't, and we just kind of get wrapped up in this wild reality of modern society and a developed part of the world, and we just, I think, teach ourselves that all this stuff matters, but is that really where our happiness is, or are we just constantly chasing something that doesn't actually exist? It's like that invisible cloud you can't see, but you can't see beyond. Oh man, this is so beautiful. I'm really glad we're here in the conversation. Okay, I'm gonna pause. Sorry, I'm like, this is awesome. I love this, and
I want to dig into a bit more about sort of the passion around energy, because some people, when they leave their job, it is to sort of hard right and go move into something very different, to go pursue some other. You kind of double down on kind of your energy passion, and so you're taking a bunch of additional risk to kind of get out and do a deeper dive into kind of where kind of the future of energy is going. And so I'd just be interested in a sort of, where did that interest in energy sort of initiate? Was it in school? Was it before that? Was it discovered along the way as a part of your TPH journey? Like tell us a little bit about why energy.
Yeah. I guess it started in school, in college. I took a fossil fuels class actually with his name is Michael Oristoglio, and he later became my advisor. And he worked at Schlumberger for a number of years, so had a pretty intimate knowledge of actually working in the oil and gas industry. And teaching a class like fossil fuels at Yale is really interesting because it's a pretty liberal institution. A lot of the students there, they have a curiosity around energy, but they have some pretty strong opinions around the use of fossil fuels and how it plays in our world and in our future going forward. So I think I think that's kind of where it started. Was, I was curious about taking this course and learning more about it, and I just found that with energy, there's sort of you talk about beauty. There's sort of a beauty in the fact that it's so interconnected with everything that we do and everything in this world. Like the energy equation is fundamentally like it's a life equation, I think, because it's how do you optimize resource usage so that we can actually live out our lives and be happy and prosperous and everything, but also take care of the resources we have at hand and make that last for generations to come, and take care of our children too, and grandchildren, etc. So I think just like that abstract nature of working in energy and like optimizing, like figuring out the ultimate solution to that was like just intellectually like kind of it, like it was just intellectually stimulating, and also like was so elegant and beautiful that I was like kind of drawn to like learning more about how all of these things in the background, how energy is produced, how energy is delivered, and what goes on behind the scenes of like what we benefit from, how that all works. And so I think that was like the root of the interest. And then, I joined TPH, and then learned a lot about like very specifically how transactions are executed, how asset packages exchange hands, how bankers present to boards, and how boards receive information and take certain actions and things like that. But it wasn't until like I started to get in this world of energy tech that I think I really started to like realize like, oh yeah, this is something I could do for the rest of my life. Like this is something, this is so interesting. Like just sitting, like I started out in 2017 just really writing research about all of these different energy tech companies And I was oftentimes the first person they had ever talked to that actually cared about what they did, and I could communicate to people that mattered about what they did. And so they would love talking to me, and so would answer all of my questions, and just like that feeling of being kind of the first to like know something about this company and be able to like deliver that information to the world. That was like a really thrilling feeling. And then going forward, like just figuring out like my viewpoint around energy and energy tech, like that whole journey, I think just really led me to where I am today, which is like, I know I want to do energy. I want to do energy technology specifically. And I am very, very cool with this being like my life path. Like I am all in on this, which has been such a privilege to like actually find something that I feel so passionate about.
So you can almost say you've discovered your life's work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, it's really interesting when we think about the role that energy plays in society and in humanity. I mean, as you touched on, right? I kind of just like heard this picture forming in my thoughts as you were sharing that story. It's like it's the subtle hero somewhere in the background of our lives, like shaping humanity, shaping modernization, shaping every aspect of our daily interactions. And it's so quiet and so subtle that we often don't even know it's there. I mean, I'm thinking about the microphones that we're speaking on right now and the technology that exists that's fueling and powering our ability to have this shared experience comes from energy.
Right.
And without that, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And so, like maybe diving into this conversation a little bit more, as you mentioned, I'd love your take. Like, I think that most humans agree we want to preserve this big, beautiful world. One of my friends calls it the sparkly marble, and we want to ensure that it continues to stay that way, and even more so, right? There's also a reality of how we get to that point, right? It's like that we need to focus on like the immediate to get to that wiser pivot of the future. And I often hear like very extreme biases. And as someone who's not super biased either way, I'm always fascinated by this because I hear one group that's like, we need to like, I don't know, big super majors are evil, or, they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, okay, I don't think it's like an us versus them. I think it's more of like the reality of humanity is that energy is critical and fundamental to advancing societies. And we all want a cleaner, more sustainable future for generations 2 years, 200 years, 2,000 years, 2 million years from now. I would argue most humans agree with that. But I just kind of wonder, like, from your perspective, like, how do we get there?
Yeah, I mean, it's
pressure,
tough, right?
Yeah, solve the world's problem of sustainability right now on Curiosity. You have 30 seconds, go.
Ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we're fighting against entropy a little bit, right? Like, whenever you do something, you inherently disrupt or mess things up. Like more humans on this earth will mess things up. Using more energy will be it will be dirty. We won't have a perfect, elegant solution by any means ever, probably. But I also think I think fundamentally, like there's such a disconnect from what we do day to day and what goes into that. What's the real cost if we, for example, order some takeout? What's the real cost to that other than from our wallets? To make that a reality for 5,000 people, in a community, is that really worth it? Or is that something that's like super incremental to our quality of life, but like super detrimental from an environmental perspective? Like, is that action worth it? I don't think we're quite there yet on, at a mainstream level. Maybe I'm not even sure if we'll ever get there, but I think we, I don't think we're there in terms of like understanding what that cost is.
You're talking sort of true visibility and accountability for
Right.
day-to-day actions on environmental impact.
Right. And
It's like that carbon is the new calorie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
kind of
perspective
carbon
that
accountability.
Exactly.
I've heard Scott talk about, and
Yeah.
there's actually quite a bit of research out on it now and different like futuristic points of view. But I think it's a really interesting point for sure. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Just super excited about this.
That's exactly like in one of my old articles, I talked about how like the carbon emissions issue is just like, it's the world losing weight. It's the world like needing to lose weight somehow. And on the one hand,
the world's a little chubby right now. We all need to slim down a little bit here.
On the one hand, the world needs to eat, right? You can't just cut food out like entirely, but and maybe you can exercise some of that off. But for the most part, we just need we need to be conscious of like, maintaining our nutritional value, while also like making healthy decisions. And we just don't have enough and we're not equipped enough to make those healthy decisions.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, a couple of things that I heard that I think are really interesting just to call out. It's all super fascinating, but a couple of things that came to mind. I think that aspect of the like where our priorities are, because there's energy, that's one component. There's like economic stimulation, that's another component. It's almost like we need like a balanced map of all of the intricacies and the touch points and the interactions and what influences and impacts what, and really be able to visualize that before we can ever start making truly conscious and intelligent decisions, because we don't know how one thing is going to impact or influence another. But if we could see almost like a predictive model or something of like, when I do A and it leads to B, it's going to affect, I don't know, like the infinity of all these other things, but just that knowledge and the visualization of that could be super valuable. Maybe that's a startup. Someone needs to take that idea and go do something with that.
There are already companies that are kind of working on this problem. I mean, obviously nobody has like a digital twin of the world. Like that's
basically what I'm asking for. I need a digital twin of the world, every human, every interaction, every conversation.
All trade-offs, all ins
and not
outs.
in a creepy way. Not in like a Skynet way.
Yeah.
Skynet, is that what it was called on Terminator?
Yep.
Yeah, not in a Skynet way.
Yeah, totally not Big Brother at all to have that.
And full transparency and throughout all of it. Oh my gosh, this is great. Wow, that's amazing.
I'm wondering, I mean, really, like Brad's saying, like a real fun conversation about kind of the details and kind of where things are going. I guess it's sort of in your research, kind of, what are you seeing? Like, what is sort of like the horizon beginning to take shape around? Like, what's sort of clearly in, clearly out in your mind, or still too early on the journey to say? Just would be interested in kind of your take as someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about this.
I mean, I would say I'm still pretty early in that journey. But one thing I've been trying to figure out is kind of the impact of like the decentralization of everything. So, we obviously crypto blockchain is like a big deal right now, but really like decentralization of like what we use day to day. So energy is one thing, electricity is one thing. We're going to have more of it produced closer to our homes, closer to where we need it. There's also just products. And chemicals. There's a lot of developments right now around modular reactors, taking waste products like CO2 or plastic or just like even stuff just in the landfill and being able to transform those into something's of value. And that's going to happen at a neighborhood and a community level. So all of a sudden you're going to have like, the Brentmore plastic that you can buy, 4
From
doors
the local
down.
community.
And that's kind of an interesting thing to visualize, is just like all of a sudden, you have kind of this push towards, super local purchasing options, like almost like you've got the farmer's market, but instead of just vegetables and honey and clothes and whatnot, you've got, your plastics and you've got, all sorts of like, home goods and recycled things that are made from just the general vicinity. And then if that occurs, then, all of a sudden we've got like, these communities, like right now, cities are really built around concentration of people, which is like kind of like it's a positive feedback loop. Like you have people in one area and then they just bring more people in. Also just access to resources, access to energy, access to water, like things like that. But then all of a sudden, if you're able to kind of actually create value from waste, you're able to create value from more things, then maybe communities just get more spread out because, you've got like a point, on the map that's like optimized for, I don't know, like these 3 landfills over here that provides enough goods and, and things for this community. Or you've got like more, I don't know, chemicals generated over here. And so that's created like this little community. So I just think that there's going to be kind of an anti-urbanization that happens because of that. It's just a thought experiment from now. I don't like know if that's going to happen, but it's kind of something that's come up from all of this is like, there's a lot of things that, even charging is just like a great example. Just like more of charging is going to happen, all around. Like I literally just finished the paragraph on the numbers, but there's 1.2 million gas pumps right now in the US. There's I think there's like 600,000 charging points. Guess how many charging points are needed by 2030?
A lot more. Boom.
Boom.
Second knuckle touch of the show.
It's not a million. It's not even 2 million. It's 20 million.
Wow.
So,
does that include like home infrastructure or is that?
It includes home infrastructure. So
that's helpful.
So you've got.
It's a little less daunting.
Yeah. But, I mean, everybody's just.
I wonder how many homes there are in the US. Like, I mean, there's obviously like apartments, high rises, things like that. But if you were to categorize it like freestanding, what's it called? Single family dwelling units. Yeah. I'd be curious. Because that would play a role.
That could be a question.
Yeah, there we go. Boom. I got a question for you. Yes. Can we do a third knuckle touch this show?
Yeah.
Hey! This is a good week. So that decentralized aspect's really interesting. And I'm going to go on just a couple thoughts on this, right? So one is I've been working on this kind of like model in my head and on paper where the D and the E is in brackets and then centralized is separated from it. And the idea is that it's decentralized to centralized, that the two together have this like beautiful like symbiotic relationship. Doesn't have to be like polarly opposing. Polarly may not be a word, but it is now. But rather like kind of combined, like is where like the full power is. Just like Captain Planet, our powers combined. And you got me thinking about the basic like fundamentals. My wife and I just got back from Europe. We were in Switzerland, specifically in Zurich. And the first thing we do when we go to a new city is we do a walking tour, a walking history tour. It's amazing. Every time you learn so much and you don't just like walk by stuff and have no idea what you're walking by.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the role that water played. And it was fascinating to think about how they like had to like cut in certain canals and channels in order to provide water to certain regions and how it fundamentally reshaped an entire city or community. And it was like that centralized to decentralized model where something, a very mass body of water was now decentralized from a centralized place to now centralize the water system yet again to provide water to the community and how it completely transformed the community. Just like, I mean, you can think of it as almost like a metaphor, but to the same thing you're speaking of, what I hadn't thought about yet is that localization. That idea of like you said, like you're effectively, by decentralizing, you're localizing. That's really interesting. There's so much to that.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it's easier also to manage, like as a consumer at least, or as like a microcosm. It's easier to manage your carbon footprint if you're able to create an enclosed community. Like, those like, I don't know if you've seen those like houses out in Nevada that are like self-sustainable, that like,
No, that sounds fascinating.
in the desert. They, they have solar panels, they have their own water source. It's all
What?
like, yeah, it's like, off the grid, really off the grid.
It's like they could live on Mars.
Cisterns and other things that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
capture the
yeah.
rare water they get out there.
Exactly.
It's like in Dune. They're like capturing the
That's
tears.
exactly it.
Yeah.
They're repurposing the tears of the bodysuits. Like,
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. It's not a negative thing. It's not an apocalyptic thing. It's a positive thing.
Net positive.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
I want to go stay in one of those, like do they have Airbnbs?
They might.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
An off the grid, fully sustainable Airbnb.
Yeah. I think the point might not be to, like, you might have to like go, just hustle your way in, because I don't think they're necessarily a tourist destination. That would be kind of against the point.
That's like completely defeats the entire ideology.
Just your presence makes it break down, Brad.
But to come at it from an educational standpoint.
I'm ruining their entire objective single-handedly. Sorry, that was not my goal. I was trying to support it and learn about it.
Yeah.
I'm researching.
Right.
Can we do that in cities?
I think we're gonna have a ton of people by 2050.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to figure out a solution to urbanization. Like, it's what Hong Kong is doing, what many cities in China are doing is not exactly sustainable.
Yeah.
And not very healthy for the population there. So I think we're gonna have to go underground. We're gonna have to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, because there's like oftentimes when I hear these conversations, at least like here in the States, it always feels like it's talking about freestanding single family dwelling unit homes, as opposed to like a high rise, a mid rise, an apartment, like multi-family dwelling spaces, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always so intrigued by it, because there's a lot of humans who live, especially in urban environments, in multi-family dwelling spaces. Right. And like, for example, where we live, and we're fortunate, we have 6 EV pumps where we are. There's 6. There's 152 units. Math doesn't add up very well.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not superchargers. They're not charging in 15 minutes. Like, so it's like, it's a great step in the right direction. And right now, if you look at the percentage of EVs in our building versus ICE vehicles, like, sure, it works for now, but I'm already seeing that start to hit the paradigm shift. And that tipping point, the theory of tipping points, 13.33%. So once we get to 13.33%, we better watch out. We're gonna have to build infrastructure really quickly. And so it's easy when it's right in your garage, sure, but there's a lot of humans that doesn't account for. And I'm just constantly thinking about like that perspective, and like, how do we solve for that? How do we get clean energy and sustainability, to the masses?
Yeah.
How do we scale that?
Yeah, I agree. I think, there's some companies trying to develop these parking spaces where there's lower cost, but you can put them all around the garage and you drive in. It's not scalable, to my knowledge right now.
Is it like a Mophie charger? You like pull up on it and it charges you?
Like induction charging?
Yeah, induction charging.
That's cool.
It is really cool.
Don't have to hassle with the plug-in.
Yeah, but how is that powered?
Just via electricity.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. But it's a little bit cost prohibitive right now.
Oh, okay.
For consumer vehicles. Like,
got it.
Because also consumer vehicles are all over the place.
That's true.
Versus like a bus fleet or something like that.
So I was in, and I'm this is way outside of my element of knowledge, but I was in a meeting recently and someone was talking about clean energy for data centers, and the response from someone else is, "Did you interrogate the electrons?" And I just it really made me pause and think, right? Like, but their question was like, how do you really know where the energy source is coming from?
Yeah.
I'd open up to either one of y'all, because both of y'all know far more about energy than I do. But
the issue with EVs is over 80% of the electrons that's powering an electric vehicle on the road today came from a fossil fuel generated thermal plant. And so you got to draw the boundary conditions around that effectively. But I think that the energy source to the consumption, sort of bridging that. I mean, the way that the grid was put into place initially over 150 years ago was because the generation, the power gen was loud and obnoxious and smelled bad. So they centralized it. They moved it outside of town. And so they started running distribution lines. And that's just sort of how it started to come together. Hydroelectric power was also a big anchor. And so you don't have hydroelectric in all places. So you have to build these large centralized facilities.
Wow.
And that's 150 years of weight of incumbency that is going to take time to shift and pivot and move away from and replace. And so it's a big issue, a big challenge. As we sort of come to the end of our conversation, I'm mindful of everybody's time. I want to ask, when you're not working on energy or thinking about energy, and maybe there's not a time where that isn't the case, but what else do you spend your time thinking about or working on?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think you love something because you're always thinking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're not forced to think about it or you're not being asked to think about it, you just think about it. And I think that is the case with energy tech and with this kind of pursuit that I'm doing now. Like, I don't feel like it's a job. It's not a job. I'm not making money from it. But like, even so, even if it were a job, I wouldn't feel like it's a job because it's just something that, like, my days feel like I'm not working at all. Like, I'm just thinking about things I like to think about, and I'm having fun with it, and it's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think my time outside of energy is like just thinking about my family and my partner, and just different ways to make sure I'm taking care of them too, I guess, while I'm off being a little bit selfish. And then I love to ski. So I go skiing a lot.
Amazing.
Are you watching the Olympics right now?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. The skiing's been insane.
Yeah. Did you watch Big Air last night?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched the men's last night and the women's the night before.
Yeah.
The women's was crazy cool, and the men's was also, but the women's was, man, that was insane.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because if you looked at the X Games like a couple years back, they were, an 1800 would have been unbelievable, but now people are like, Alex Hall attempted a 2160. That's insane.
That's literally like, how does the human body even do that? Yeah, there was one guy came out the gate with like, what is it, an 1880 or whatever it was. It was crazy. Like, just started off. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. No,
that was mind blowing. And how they like grab the skis, and I mean, I'm lucky if I'm like on the bunny slope, like just trying to get down the hill, and they're over here just killing. That's not entirely true, but basically, like bunny or green is like where I like to play.
Well, then also in figure skating, like the number of rotations that they're doing now.
Yeah.
Like, when the Tanya Harding the whole thing came out, or the movie came out, I didn't pay attention when the actual thing came out, but she was trying for, I think it was like a triple axel, right? And now they're talking about quad axel. Yeah,
there was a quad done this week. There was a young lady that did the first quad in Olympic history, I think.
The Russian, yeah.
Yeah. She was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then I'm loving Nathan Chen. I'm like totally like fanboying now over Nathan Chen.
Yeah.
And then her last name's Gu. I can't remember her first name.
Eileen.
Yeah, Eileen Gu. I'm also like fanboying over Eileen and her skill, and just like coming in first and winning the gold, and she wasn't projected to win the gold. Like, it's just so cool.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And I only wish I started skiing earlier in my life, because I started as an adult. I wish I had started as a kid, so I could even remotely like get to like, even if I could just do a 360, that would make my life. Like, just to get to that point.
I empathize.
If I could ski at black, that would make my life.
Feel the same way. I skied for the first time as an adult and lived in all sorts of places where skiing and snowboarding were available all year round. And the first time on skis, I was like, I've made all of the wrong decisions in life. I should
It
have
is amazing.
been prioritizing this. And had friends that did it. And so that's fantastic. You get up every season and making the time for that, because there's obviously not a lot of that here in Houston.
Right.
There's not a ton of skiing, no. Snowshoeing's also really fun, like mountain hiking, but snowshoeing and snow biking, which is like the mountain biking.
Oh, yeah.
Like the big fat tires through the snow.
I haven't
That's
done
also
that
really
yet, but I've seen people do the fat tire bikes.
Those are cool. The snowshoeing's really cool. We did one in Beaver Creek. That was, I think that's like 13.5 if I remember correctly. So it was pretty high.
Wow.
And you went like straight. It was one level below what they call sprint snowshoeing, which is almost like Olympic level. But it was by accident. We just happened to be with a guide. My wife wanted to do it because there was wine and cheese at the bottom of the mountain. And so that's why we did this thing, was just for like the wine and cheese. And then come to find out it ended up being this like epic like hike. And it was so freaking fun. And I had a 360 VR camera with me that I was able to bring. So I got to capture a lot of it. This was before we had like Matterports and stuff. We had like this crazy rig with GoPros that we had put together at our studio. It was so awesome though. Like, so those kind of things I've gotten into, but skiing, I would like to be more intentional about, because I think skiing is super cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's good. Burns a lot of calories and you get to eat mountain food. So.
I mean,
how could you complain?
I am here for the wild game.
It's amazing. Deanna, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. It's been an incredible conversation. Thank you for being here.
We broke a world record. 3 knuckle touches on Curiosity for the first time. Boom. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Onward